Anybody want to sit down to fill in that chair?
Yeah, there you go. All right, so welcome to the official first reading of the Pilot Citizens Initiative Review Statement for the State of California. For those of you who are just joining us who haven't tuned into our live stream for all 4 days, the Citizens Initiative Review has brought together a panel of 20 Californians. They were selected randomly, sent 15,000 emailers out across California, all regions, all the way from the Oregon border to the Mexican border, all the way from the Pacific and Arizona borders. And from that 15,000, we received a number of responses, and from those responses, selected a panel of 20 people who reflect the state geographically, ethnically, in terms of their age, their gender, their political views, a whole bunch of different demographic factors, so that we really have a panel here who have committed 4 days of their lives to diving in deeply to an issue that affects the voters of California. The issue that they have been exploring is this year's Proposition 10 on the California general election ballot. That proposition was selected by an advisory committee, which consisted of academics and policymakers, policy experts, and other neutral people from across the state. They selected Prop 10 as one of our complicated initiatives that could really benefit from a bit of a deeper dive. Over the course of the 4 days, these citizens have had a chance to hear from the advocates for and against the measure. They've also had a chance to question some unaffiliated experts about the claims that the campaign's made, and then they've had a chance to deliberate with each other. And the statement that they've come up with is entirely their own. They developed it based on what they heard. They edited it based on what they heard and worked together in small groups and large groups to come up with the statement. We're going to be reading that live now for the first time. And we've selected 3 of our panelists randomly to speak to the claims that the ballot measure is making, as well as to what the panel has identified as the strongest arguments for and against that measure. So I'm going to invite our first reader to come up.
Hi, I'm presenting our key findings. These findings were ranked by citizen panelists, starting with the most important for voters to know. Prop 10 would repeal the Costa-Hawkins Act. This act currently provides exemptions for rent control on single-family dwellings and housing units built after 1995, and allows rent increases upon vacancy for a unit already rent controlled. Prop 10 does not create rent control policies or rent control boards. Instead, it provides communities the option to create such policies and organizations. Prop 10 allows local communities to determine which types of housing are subject to rent control. Communities could potentially change the number of rent-controlled units available. Prop 10 does not generate restrictions on the construction of new housing units. Prop 10 does not take away rental property owners' guarantee of a fair rate of return. The rent control housing inventory may be increased by the repeal of the Costa-Hawkins Act, the existing state regulation which now exempts single-family homes and housing built after 1995. A 2017 Stanford University study showed that San Francisco experienced higher rental costs and insufficient supply of affordable housing under existing rent control policies. Prop 10 has no direct impact on homeowners who are not landlords, but does provide the opportunity for safeguarding property values and neighborhoods through our stronger local rent control policies. Thank you.
Hello, I'll be reading the statements in support of proposition, which will be Prop 10. We find this to be the strongest reasonable rent increases by allowing the creation of stronger local rent control policies. This is important because without restrictions or guidelines created by rent control policy, higher rents will become more prevalent. This may lead to an increase in homelessness and unsafe living conditions. Finding. According to the principle of planning for sustainable communities, Prop 10 protects renters by limiting rent hikes and ultimately keeping families in their homes and communities. This is important because rent control could promote stability and prevent displacement, allowing communities to grow and flourish. Finding. By limiting rent increases, tenants will have a great share of disposable income available to spend. This could contribute to the growth of a more vibrant local economy. This is important because a majority of California renters spend more than 30% of their income on rent. Limiting rent increases helps citizens to meet basic needs and improve quality of life. The affordable housing supply in California is not sufficient to meet the demands of our growing state. This drives up rental prices, putting renters of all income levels at risk for displacement, eviction, and/or homelessness. Local governments will be allowed to set rent control policies that meet the needs of their communities. Thank you.
Statement in opposition of the proposition. We find these to be the strongest reasons to vote against the proposition. Finding. Proposition 10 rent control policies may reduce the income of property owners. Safe, affordable living options may be reduced if property owners forego maintenance and repair to cut operating costs. This is important because the lack of housing is a serious concern for many communities and could cause neighborhood decline. This may reduce property values. Finding. Prop 10 allows local governments to dictate rental rates of single-family homes or a room in a home, controlling how much landlords can charge. This is important because current regulations protect landlords of single-family homes, but the passing of Prop 10 places them at risk of losing their critical right to set their own rates. Finding. Simply removing the restrictions of the Costa-Hawkins Act does not solve the housing crisis in California. This is important because repealing the Costa-Hawkins Act would not address the problems of supply and demand for affordable housing. Repealing the Costa-Hawkins Act may create more government agencies, adding administrative costs that could be passed on to the renters and taxpayers. Rent control has been associated with the slowing of new construction, a reduced supply of rental units, and rent increases. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll say once again, thank you all so much for your service to the citizens of California. Thank you.